1957, the year we won it.
It being Sam Maguire, of course. That man you just heard is Frank Lynch, the left half forward on that victorious day in 1957. This is the 100th episode of the Loud and Proud podcast, an oral history of the 1957 All-Ireland campaign, told by Frank Lynch.
And here they come. Louth, O'Brien, O'Neill, Conlon, White, Coleman, Bean, Riley, Cunningham, O'Donnell, Lynch, MacDonald, Rose, Smith, Flood and Meehan. And here it is. Louth are All-Ireland champions for the third time.
You have all your questions ready.
I do, yeah, I do. And I was doing it. I was chatting to the father, and he was saying the one memory he has of Frank Lynch is you throwing Jimmy Keaveney around the place and draw that in 66, was it? After he's beat Longford.
Oh yeah, 66. Yeah, we beat Longford, and yes, and I think Dublin beat us that day.
Yeah, it was Dad was blaming the goalkeeper, was he? The goalie let Timmins in for a handy goal.
That's right. First of all, we had to make 3 changes. Muckle wasn't able to play, he was suspended. Benny Grockran didn't turn up because of exams.
Okay.
He was studying for exams, and then Leslie Toll got his job busted previous Sunday. So we had to make a lot of major changes. You know, Mick Sherlock was playing full back, I think, that day, was he?
I think he was, yeah.
I think he was playing on Big John, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
But we had to make a lot of changes, and that hampered us greatly. We played well against Longford. They were
League champions.
They're National League champions or something, yeah.
Yeah, League champions, and the Comenius beat them.
That's right, yeah. And I was playing full back that day on Bobby Burns. Bobby's dead now, and Bobby was our big changer man, and I was only after coming back after a bad hand injury, you know. And when he first came back, I did a bit of training and that type of thing, and it was all right. But I knew he was, because I played 7-8 football with him, and I knew he was a bit of a, he wouldn't be the bravest.
Oh, right.
So,
right.
I let him know that from the start. But the first ball he got, he struck the crossbar with a hell of a wallop, you know.
Yeah.
And after that, I don't remember him getting the ball. Everything went well for us that day. We won well. That was an awful shock to Longford that day, you know.
Oh, big time. I'm still, I'd still be reminded of it. I would have relations in Longford.
Would you? Yeah.
Yeah. And from Cashel, and they would have played for Longford. Team. Yeah, they had a good team, but my father likes to rub it into them, and he remembers it very well. I suppose. Let's get on to the main point to have you on it is 1957.
All right, yes.
Now, it very nearly didn't happen for you, Frank, did it?
1957 was an unusual year. The year we won it, of course, you know, and one never envisaged that when you were starting off that particular year you were going to win the All-Ireland. But the fact of the matter was that I was playing with Louth from 1956, and my first game was against Roscommon in Roscommon. Although I was selected to play after for the match against Wicklow the Sunday before, I didn't play and I didn't turn up, and I didn't let them know what happened or anything else. The fact was I got an injury playing rugby, and I didn't turn up for the game in the athletic grounds.
Yeah.
Now, we were playing the following Sunday in the athletic grounds. We were playing the final of the McArdle Cup, and we were playing Roach Emmets. They were a well-fancied side because there were a few country players and all the rest of it, and we were playing. We got to the final. We beat the Blues in the final. That's the game I was selected to play after. We played that game with the Blues in Castleberringham. I was selected after that game and didn't, as I said, turn up. But because of the injury, I got playing rugby. But anyway, I thought my call for the Louth senior team was gone at that point, because when I didn't turn up, they selected the team to play against Roscommon, and I wasn't on it. We played the match against Roach Emmets in Dundalk in the final of the Carl Cup. It was played on the Feast of Christ the King, and on 4th of November 1956, and the game was put back. Brought forward an hour, but so that it wouldn't clash, believe it or not, with the religious duties in the St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Wow.
That's how religious we were then.
Yeah.
But we played the match, and after about 20 minutes, we lost our centre half back, which was a brother of mine. Phil, he got a very bad wallop, to say the least of it, and he had to be carried off, and he was left unconscious for a week as a result of that injury.
He broke his neck, did he? He broke his neck. He broke his neck, did he?
That's right. That particular game, he got a terrible wallop, and when we confronted the man that done it, where the referee took my name and he took my brother's name, but he ignored the man that was after the culprit, in other words, So things weren't going well. And before half time, then we lost I think it was before half time, we lost the other centre field man that was playing along with me. I was playing centre field, and we lost Tony Duggan. He was a captain in the army with a broken arm. So both of them were big losses to us. But then we brought in a couple of young lads. Davy Bunn was one of those, and he was at school with me at college in St Mary's College. And he later got on the Loudmire team in 1958. He was very young, and he played extremely well. Now, we lost that game by 7 points to 4. 1-7 to 1-4. We lost that game. And but the referee had to be escorted off the field. Now, at that point in time, when there was a bit of a commotion in the dressing room and all the rest of it after the match, Jim Quigley and Jack Regan came in. They were the two selectors on the Louth team that time. There were two of the selectors, And Jim Quigley and Jack Regan came in. They spoke to a couple of the players for a while, and then they came over to me to know where they travelled to Roscommon on the Sunday. And I said, no way. I was so annoyed of what happened. I wasn't in the slightest bit interested, And I said to Jim Quigley, no, I don't want to hear of it, or something like that. And both of the men went out, made some remark to a first cousin of mine, Roger Lynch, who knew them well, and they went off about their business. But during the week, now Phil was pretty bad with the injury, and pretty bad in hospital, and we were concerned about him. So I know then on the Wednesday, I was in St Mary's College, and the classroom door was wrapped, and it was Jim Quigley that was standing outside it. And he requested to see me, and he came to me and he said, will you come to Roscommon on Sunday next? You're now on the team, he says. Now, I knew the team had already been selected. From Michael Hines of Young Ireland was playing left wing. You are now playing left wing, he says. Come to me at that point, if you come. So I did. I said I would, So I travelled over on that Sunday. I played against Roscommon, and I remember going over with Stephen White and Brian Reynolds and Paddy Butterley, I think, with Harry Riley in his taxi car, and it was nearly the first time I was in Roscommon, so to speak. Now, when I played against Roscommon, my name went down as Ollie Lynch.
Yes,
I had a nickname called Lolly. And everybody thought my name was Ollie because of that. Do you follow me?
Yes, I get you, yeah.
So if you look at the records of that match now, you will note it was Ollie Lynch that was playing left half forward.
Yes. I was getting confused when I was doing my research, Frank. I was getting confused. I thought I had the wrong man, but you're the Ollie Lynch, and there's a reason for that, is there?
Oh, yeah, the Ollie Lynch, you see, he was left half forward, I was left half forward, and I don't know if the reason was because of my rugby exploits. Okay. I had been playing rugby with St Mary's College, Dundalk. I was not selected on the Louth minor team because of that fact, and Canon MacDonald wouldn't hear tell of selecting me. Right. I was, in his eyes, illegal because I infringed Rule 27. The ban rule was there at that time, and anybody who played rugby, cricket, soccer, or hockey was illegal and couldn't play Gaelic football. That was the rule then. And that rule remained there until 1970. player when it was removed.
Yeah.
Now, I think there was quite a number broke that rule left, right, and centre at times, But I mean, if you even attended a match, you were illegal. A soccer match.
Yeah.
You were illegal. And mind you, at that particular time and around that time, I would have been occasionally going to Ory Hill Park to watch some of the Dundalk matches,
Okay.
In fact, if memory serves me right, I went to watch Dundalk as far back as 1949 when they had the great Scottish team, And I used to ride a bicycle out to see them at that time, myself and some other fellow, But that was then. The game with Roscommon, we won. We won by 4 pints, and I got a goal in a pint. Now, Jerry O'Malley would have been playing against Roscommon. That was the big player I knew at that time, and I was playing with a man called Mick Shivnan. He was right half back, and they had a good goalkeeper, and a called Brady, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
But they had a strong enough team, and we beat them. And naturally, the selectors were very delighted, and I was delighted everything went well for me. And but I didn't know my name was going down as Ollie Lynch until it was shown to me on paper the next day.
Yeah.
Frank Lynch wasn't saying it was Ollie Lynch, So someone was covered in their tracks at that time, I would say, because of the fact that I was illegal.
Yeah.
Remember, I had been playing with St Mary's College in Dundalk. I was playing rugby with them. I was captain of that team. I was the first day-by captain they ever had playing because of the fact that I was also capped to play for Leinster in a match in 1956, the 14th or 15th of March 1956, against Munster in Donnybrook.
Okay.
And on that team with me was Kevin Flynn, Jerry Tormey, Mick Hipwell, Eddie Thornton. They were all international players afterwards. They became international players afterwards. I played with all of them that time, And I got that cap, and of course, this was a big feather in the nest of the priest that was training me in the college, and all the rest of it. And I was very fit at the time. There's no question about that,
And when you were sitting in the classroom, Frank, and Jim Sogger Quigley, as he's known, comes in, did you know him? Like, would you have known the Laird manager at this time, or?
Did I know Jim Quigley? I would have known every Louth player that played from 1948, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't have known them to speak to them, but I knew them by sight.
So you're a fanatic at the end?
Yeah, well, I was. I was very much involved in the Gaelic football because Louth had tremendous footballers back then. They had great players. They had great teams. You take the teams in the 40s, 43 All-Ireland semi-final, 48 All-Ireland semi-final, 49 the Leinster final against Meath, three games and all the rest of it. 1950 during the All-Ireland final, 1953 during the All-Ireland semi-final. They're powerful players. And, I used to go around as a kid, as a young fella, I used to go around with photographs of them on my breast, if you know what I mean.
No way.
Showing off as to who they were and who I knew and all the rest of it, But they were great players, and you had something to look up to all the time. And even when you were out working with the farmers, as I was as a young fella, I do commentaries on matches and everything else at that time because I would have known the players so well. Well, they were only commentaries on matches, but in those games, those times, Louth always won those matches, as it were,
Yeah.
And there was a great interest. There was a great interest at the time, and it was just the interest that young boys at that time took in the game. And I said to myself, now, what's wrong now?
Yeah, that's my next question, Frank. Is that something that's missing nowadays? With
It is totally missing. There's no enthusiasm. No, it's gone. There's no because unfortunately you don't have players to look up to, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
You don't have the teams to look up to. And, what annoys me greatly is the fact that we have failed in our efforts to build teams and to provide players of that kind. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
And that's missing all the time. And Oh, I know the game has changed, and I know all this type of thing. A lot of the game has changed, not to my liking, as far as I'm concerned. It isn't. But there is no question about it. I can understand young fellas at the present time. When you talk to them about a Louth team, and they'll just ask you, they never saw them playing, because there's no interest, because they're not winning matches.
So you're saying yourself, as a young player, you're coming into that setup in '57. You're getting the car down with Stephen White, and then
Yes.
like, are you overawed? Are you looking at these fellas and thinking,
I'm
wow?
looking at Stephen, he's Stephen White, yes, of course. He's a great player. It was a big thing for someone like me coming in as an 18-year-old. I wasn't even 18 yet then, coming in being with some of these players. And when I look back and think of the selectors we had in 1956, at that time, the selectors we had, I had Jack Bell. In 1949, he was Player of the Year in Ireland. He was voted Player of the Year, Jack Bell. He was one of the selectors. Jim Quigley. He played in all the Leinster Championship matches, and Jack Regan was also captain the two teams in 43 and 48 to win the Leinster Championship.
Okay.
That Brian Reynolds played for Louth. McCone played away back years before that on Leinster teams, and all of the players I mentioned played in Leinster teams. Yeah. That was the calibre of men that happened to be. One would be overawed by the fact that those type of men were around you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Like, it gave you confidence coming in, and
when you look around you now and you say to yourself, where is the Louth players? Right. You don't have them on the line either.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, this is
So
okay.
The tradition that we had is gone. And I would ask some of the people concerned that they were involved in a lot of it, who killed it?
Yeah. I suppose maybe that's why I'm trying. I have you on, Frank, to make you reconnect, like the fact that Louth people can be All Ireland winners, and we possess All Ireland winners in our midst. Because it's completely alien nowadays.
Totally, absolutely, and this is most unfortunate. We have lost the tradition that we once had.
Yes,
and that tradition is gone now. All you listen to in the town of Dundalk is the soccer we have, and all. I'm not playing down soccer or anything like that. It's great to have good soccer teams and rugby teams for that matter.
Yeah.
But where is the workers? The voluntary workers are not there anymore. No. Everybody has to be paid. Everybody has to be given money to pay to coach this and coach that and coach the other. You have loads of expenses going out now.
Yeah,
and you have
I suppose
that's
just a sign of the times, I'm afraid. But the tradition,
I'm afraid it is.
Yeah, and the tradition, Frank, it started that year in Carlow. You weren't playing that day.
No, I'll tell you how I was not playing in that Carlow game. I recall very well being picked for that game against Carlow. I was selected to play against Carlow, and if you go back on the records, you'll find that. But on the Saturday, I was at home listening to a soccer match, believe it or not. It was between Newcastle and Blackpool. And Stanley Matthews would have been playing for Blackpool.
Yeah.
Jackie Milburn would have been playing for Newcastle. I think Newcastle beat them that day,
Yeah.
And who comes on the scene but Jim Quigley? And he arrives to tell me that he's had representation from the junior selectors. That's the Louth junior selectors, because we were now I was also playing with the junior team. I was playing centre field for the junior team that year.
Okay.
And I was playing with Peter Judge in the middle of the field. And we had beaten Meath and we had beaten Longford. And we had now, as it were, gone on to get to the final of the Leinster Championship. And who would we be playing in the Leinster Junior Championship but Kilkenny?
Okay.
No, Jim Quigley arrived out at the doorstep. He rode his bike from Kilkenny to tell me that I wouldn't be playing that the next day on the Sunday night, because he had protests from the junior selectors not to play me. They were certain, as far as they were certain, they were going to win the All Ireland Junior.
Yeah.
And they wanted the team left alone. that was their attitude, and that was their right, if you know what I mean.
Suppose,
But
they're going
I
right
was
ahead.
eligible to play junior. Leave me alone. And I was now out of the senior team, right?
Yeah.
I went to the match. I saw the match. Now we are playing Wexford in the next round, senior.
Yes.
And I am picked to sub again, right? For the game against Wexford in Croke Park. And a couple of there was a number of changes made on the Louth team following the game against Carlow. And if you look at the team, you'll find a few changes made. And on that team, I was picked to sub. Now, the morning of the match, as I was going to be picked up to take me to Croke Park, this fella contacted me to tell me not to go to Croke Park, to make sure I was in St Mary's College, because that was the sports day in St Mary's College, where all the boarders' parents came, and it was always a huge occasion in the college itself.
Oh my God!
For sports activities, and that if I didn't go, it was possible that I would be expelled from the school.
Didn't make it easy for you, Frank, did they?
Pardon?
They didn't make it easy for you.
I was possible. Well, that was. I could in telling that story, I would have to go back to the National League match when we played Galway's second game in 1956.
Right.
Together that one, because in 1956 we played Roscommon, and after that we played the game against Galway. They were All Ireland champions, Galway. Now I had the great delight in being picked to play against Galway, All Ireland champions, in RD on the 18th of November 1956. Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm playing in a fella called McKissan. Now, what happens then? On the Saturday, I'm playing a rugby match in St Mary's College against CUS, a sister college in Dublin.
Okay.
We won that match, and that was on the Saturday. I went to the manager of the team afterwards, Father Bishop, and I said to him, Father, I won't be in tomorrow because I'm playing a Gaelic game in RD against Galway. And he says to me, that's what you think. Okay. Well, I am, I said. When I leave this school to say I'm going to play Gaelic football, well, that's the mistake that you're going to make, he says.
Okay.
And he continued to argue his case. And he says, well, look, he says, the best thing you can do is to come in tonight and see the superior, Father McGuigan. He is in Dublin with a junior team. And have it out with him, he says. Okay,
right.
So I went home on my bicycle to Logan Green, another 4 mile, and 4 mile back that evening, that Saturday. And I was in the college at 8 o'clock. And I met Father McGuigan. And I remember two of the priests I met were Father McGoskill and Father Ford, and both said they'd pray for me, whatever that meant. So eventually Father McGuigan came on, and he laid it on that line that if I didn't do what I was told, I was showing very bad example. The boys in the school, I was captain of the team, blah, blah, blah. And this was terrible. I was on the Leinster team, and there was a Leinster selector coming tomorrow as well, that Sunday, to see us playing against the Mary Stratton Lions. We were playing that team in the college.
Yeah.
And if I didn't show up, I wasn't going to get on that team to play against Ulster and Ravenhill. I was listening to all of this. Anyway, he says, he brought me up to see the president of the college, Father Byrne. Father Byrne talked to me about how St Mary's College come to play rugby and the arguments and rows they used to have with the Louth County Board over the fact that they were winning so many of the championships when they had a Gaelic team. And they turned then to play play rugby way back in 1848. He told me all this history.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I was only half interested, let's put it that way. So So he says, go home and discuss it with your parents, he says, and whatever their parents say, you do. So I went home, rode my bicycle again home. Now I was after doing maybe another 4 miles. That's 16 miles I was done that day, at least. You know. So I went home, and as I was going into my house in Loudon Green, my home in Loudon Green, about to wrap the door when 4 priests arrived out in a little Morris Minor, right? And they got out of the car and they came to the door and they wrapped the door before I did. And honest to God, I'm sure my mother thought, Lord of mercy, that I was after being killed or something when she saw the 4 priests at the door. And the four priests at the door told her what they were about. And she, to make a long story short, she just said to them, look, I prefer if you played with the wee lads in the school, not these big lads, he says, you know, or something like that. Mm-hmm. Well, these 2 priests were real GA priests, I knew that too. And they said to her, well, look, they said, we let him go tomorrow, and we'll be over to see him in Ardee. Right. This was the comment they made, 2 of them made. So I ended up playing against Galway in Ardee, and if I might say so, I did very well. And after the match, Soccer Quigley came over to me. He told me some of the allowed officials were giving out about I'd been playing rugby and all the rest of it. And he says to me, you never mind them. He says, you mind me. He says, you know? Yeah. And I said, fair enough. But that's the summary of what happened. The following day, I went back into St. Mary's College, okay? I was met by the Father McGuigan, who's the superior, and he complimented me on the match the previous day, and well, I did, and all the rest of it. But to see the bad news now, he says, you're no longer captain of St. Mary's College.
Oh, he got you that way, okay.
And on top of that, to say, you'll not be going to Ravenhill because you're too far behind with your studies, in our opinion, you know, and we'll leave you alone. That cap is gone, he says.
Nice.
In other words, I wouldn't be sent to play against Ulster and Ravenhill the following Saturday.
Yeah.
So I didn't pass any remarks of it, but it become serious, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Always the next thing that was going to happen to me.
Yeah.
The next thing was going to happen to me if it got out of line again, as far as Father McGuigan and a couple of them were concerned. There was only one place for me, and that's out of the school. Yeah. Maybe. This is the thing you were thinking. Now let me say, I'm saying a lot of these things, and I have no doubt that college, the priests in the college, were very, very, very good to me, always.
Yeah, I suppose so.
In many other ways, you know, and they helped me every way they could. But I was immersed completely in Gaelic football at this time, you know, and I was very annoyed that they didn't get playing with the Louth minor team. They wouldn't pick me because they deemed me illegal, and now I was playing with the senior team, and I was going under the name of Ollie Lynch. And there was a purpose in that, because if anybody looked for the name Frank Lynch, they would say, "Oh, sure, he plays rugby, and why isn't he suspended?" You know?
Yes, yeah.
He's illegal.
So you don't play then against Wexford because of that. What? You don't play then against Wexford because of that, and then
I did not play against Wexford because of that.
Yeah,
and now I'm picked to play
Kildare in the semi-final
against Kildare Cup, right?
Yeah.
Now remember, we have won the junior championship, and we beat the Larder, the Mead, and the Longford, and we had a good junior team.
Yeah.
My own brother, who was very injured in the previous year, 56, he was playing centre half back on that junior team.
Okay.
And we had gone to the Leinster final, but I played in both the Mead and Longford games with those players, you know.
Yeah.
And we won easily, and now they're playing Kilkenny in the final above all teams, Kilkenny, you know.
Yeah.
And anyway, we are playing Kildare. Louth beat Kildare easy enough. I was a sub on that team. I didn't get into the team. They didn't need me. They brought Jimmy McDonald back, and he scored about 2 goals and 3 goals and 2 pints or something. They won it 5-8 to 1-7.
Yeah, and they were Leinster champions, weren't they?
Yeah, and now the team is being selected to play against Dublin
The Dubs,
in the
yes.
Leinster final.
Yeah, yeah.
And to take you along to that game, I was listed as a sub.
Okay.
I was still eligible to play junior, thus. And being listed as a sub on the morning or during the week, if something happened, Patsy Coleman, he broke collarbone and was unable to play.
Right.
And the heading of the Independent that morning from John McDonald in the concern, he was used to be a reporter for the Independent, and he wrote to say that I would be in the heading was that Lynch will be replacing Coleman and played as right half forward with O'Donnell switching back to half back.
Okay.
And I was full sure that was happening on that day until I arrived at the dressing room, and we were preparing for the match, and in comes Sean Cunningham, the manager of the junior team. And there was a discussion with the chairman of the county board, Jimmy Mullen, and two other selectors, and you could overhear some of the comments they were making.
Yeah.
And it came back to there's no point from coming from Jimmy Mullen and Sean Cunningham making two changes for one. In other words, they were saying, why are you putting O'Donnell back to right half back and putting Lynch on right half forward? Leave Lynch alone and put McCoy on, Barney McCoy.
Barney, yeah.
And that won the day. And the Louth team went out with Barney McCoy on at right half back instead of Patsy Coleman. The game was on 10 minutes. And this is exactly what happened, because I was sitting behind Brian Reynolds. And the game was on 10 minutes when the comments came in. Alfie Monks was playing.
Yeah.
And he was on the team, and Alfie seemed to pull back in the ball or whatever it was. But the next thing I heard was a comment coming from Brian Reynolds, his selector. That's enough, he says. I don't want to see no more of it. Put on Lynch. And that's how I got on the team.
That was it.
And I got on the team after 10 minutes. And I got a couple of points in that game. Right? Someone said I got two, you know.
Yeah.
And that was against Dublin. And was very satisfied with my game after that. And after that, then it was a case of going on to play Tyrone in the All-Ireland semi-final. And Louth went on to win the Leinster Junior final against Kilkenny below in Newbridge, right?
Yeah, okay.
And Louth Juniors now were in the All-Ireland semi-final against Mayo.
Okay.
That team has sort of been nearly forgotten about.
Right.
It was a great team. And they were now in a situation of playing their second best team when they went on to the All-Ireland semi-final, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Would you have trained alongside each other?
No, we're not training together at all. We were doing our own training as a senior team in the athletic grounds for the Leinster final.
Right.
And we were doing that. That's what I was training for the Leinster final below in the athletic grounds. The juniors were doing their own training, as it were. Well, I don't think they did that a hell of an awful lot, as far as I could make out. I don't know exactly, but I do know that my own brother was playing with that, and he was playing very well too with the junior team.
Was he giving you stick at home? Was he saying, "Why, come on and play with the juniors with me," or was he happy enough to see you go on with the seniors?
Yeah, well, he was happy enough to go on with the juniors. You know, there's no doubt about that. But he did come into the reckoning in a couple of after he came into the reckoning on the senior team a couple of times,
okay.
You know.
Yeah,
but his injury that he got in '56 went against him very badly, you know.
And come here, Frank. It didn't go too well for you in the All-Ireland semi-final against Tyrone.
The All-Ireland semi-final against Tyrone, I was picked on the left wing that particular day. I was playing on an experienced player called was it Patsy Devlin or one of those, you know? Was it Devlin or Donnelly? I forget, you know.
Yeah,
but it wasn't so much that. It was an unusual game. I was never, I can say it safely, I always liked to be in the thick of things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And all the time you were told, stay out in your wing, you know, and bring your half back out to the side in with you. you know, and I was inclined to go in and look for the ball. If the ball wasn't being passed up to you or anything like that, well, you had to go and look for it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I spent a fair bit of time looking for ball. I would agree that on the face of it, I didn't seem to have a good game against Tyrone. You did your best, but it was baptism of fire, if you like to put it that way.
Yeah, and that's the kind of that was the role of the wing forward back then. Like,
Stay out in your wing and all
yeah.
this type of thing. But that did not suit me at all. I didn't like that part of it, and I don't know who tried to make me a winger because I never played on the wing for my club. You know, it was always centre field.
And although you beat Tyrone and you're in an All-Ireland final, are you still you're probably a little bit anxious then about the final then itself? Am I going to be starting? Am I going to be playing? What were you?
Yes, well, that's true, because in a nutshell, I ended up in playing 2 games against Armagh in Drogheda and Armagh in Killeavy or some sort of a tournament. And in both those games, I played challenge games, in other words, after the Tyrone match. And if I might say so, I played well in those 2 matches and scored goals as well. The result of that, I was Mickey McKeown came to me, and I was a bit feverish, as it were, about whether I was going to get my place in the final. But he came to me and he said to me, "Look, you just remember you are playing in the final."
Yeah. That's unreal.
That was about 3 weeks beforehand.
Yeah, to play a challenge game out in between a final, that's unheard of as well. You know, when you look at the times, and like you're a young man playing in that, and you're being told that you're starting in an All-Ireland final. How was the nerves, or was there much hype around Dundalk or Hagerstown at that time?
No, it didn't seem to. It didn't seem to be on there. It didn't seem to bother me an awful lot, you know. Because remember, I had been doing my leaving certificate, right up until June, you might say, you know, and I'd been carrying all this burden with me all the time.
Okay.
And it wasn't easy. You were going all the time. I remember this. I would be riding a bicycle 16 mile a day. I'd be going into school in the morning, back home for my lunch, back into school in the afternoon, and back home again in the evening after doing the studying up till 7:30 in the evening.
Okay.
And I would be playing then with the Geraldines. Remember that? I'd be playing with the. Please, I didn't many. I was playing here, there, and everywhere, and then I had the rugby. We also, by the way, had got to the semi-final of the Senior Rugby Cup against Clarenure, which was a big achievement. Now I had to deal with that.
That's another thing, yeah,
as well.
Yeah, it's easy.
And we played. Clarenure beat us 15 points to 3 or something, and we did well. We probably were expected to do better, but we didn't. We had a great side, to say the least of it, you know, in rugby. And I was a very busy man, and having to study and do all that type of thing at the same time. I didn't have 1 minute to myself, and indeed 1 minute to think of this game or that game or the other game. It was whatever come up and do your training as well.
I suppose that's what they say, isn't it? Never ask, always ask a busy man to do something for you.
Yes, ask a busy man. But it was a hectic year. There was no question about that.
And then the game itself.
A bit of a rumpus, all right, about who Peter Smith was getting, who was now playing centre half in place of the injured Jim McArdle.
And Peter wanted a number 6 jersey. He wasn't going to wear the sub
jersey. He did, of course, yeah. And there was an argument over that. It was well known that Jim McArdle was selected on the team, as it were, because to sort of fool the Cork fellas and let them know that Jim McArdle was playing, because Jim McArdle was playing good football that year, and unfortunately got an injury prior to the final and didn't play. Wasn't able to play.
Yeah.
But, he was a big loss in that sense. But I mean, Peter Smith then was given the number 16 jersey or whatever it was, and he that since he was they knew he was playing 2 weeks before that. They knew he would be playing centre half. He couldn't understand why he was given the number 16 jersey or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And but I think that's the way it ended up. He had to wear the number 16 jersey.
He did wear the 16. Okay, and it was actually he didn't wear the red and white that day because your opponents were Cork and
we were green. Yeah,
yeah, for
that's
Leinster,
right.
and they wore the
The
blue.
green of Leinster. That's right. Yeah.
Paddy Harrington was marking you that day. The golfer father.
Well, if you look at the Cork team and examine the Cork team,
yeah,
you had the biggest team, I suppose, that ever played in Croke Park.
Yes, Toots Callagher and
Sean Moore, centre field. Eric Rainoville, 6'3".
Yes.
You had Harrington, 6'2". You had Green, 6'2" easily. You had Driscoll, 6 foot. You had Dennis Bernard, well over 6 foot. You had Big Duggan on the square, 6'2" or 3". It was unbelievably the size of the men were huge men, you know.
And they were winning fairly. They were winning fairly well. They would look comfortable, and then Kevin Behan sends in the sideline ball, and I suppose the rest is history. Then Dan Murray comes out to claim it. Greenham gets it. It trickles over the line. Are you around the square? Are you on the square looking at it?
2 or 3 feet away from it.
Right, you can see the ball crawl over the line.
And that's the biggest regret I had.
Right,
that
go on.
I didn't pull on the balls across the line. Because when the reporters came in after the match, they wanted to know who scored the goal. Was it Cunningham or Lynch? But it was Dan Murray holds to this day that it hit off his arm and not Sean Cunningham's arm. But Sean Cunningham went up. He went up for the ball with him, and the ball broke and ended up going over the line. Sean didn't kick it over the line or anything like that, but it ended up going over the line. Yeah, and that's why I'm saying the ball hopped just near about 2 foot in front of me or 3 foot. And I'm sorry I didn't pull anything saying it, you know.
I read an article a couple of years ago. Louth played Cork in a league game. A couple of years ago in Division 2, and there was a bit on it about Dan Murray, the goalie. It still haunts him, that ball crawling over the line, because they were big favourites.
Yeah, well, that's right. And Dan, you see, had relations in Castlebellingham.
Yes,
Tony Fast, he was a bus inspector and all that, you know.
Yeah.
And Dan was on to me on a regular basis. He's the only one. There's only 2 of them left, still living, and that's Dan and
Sean Moore.
And Sean Moore.
Yeah.
That's the only 2 players alive at this stage, you know. And I'm after sending a lot of stuff off to Dan because he's writing his memoirs or something like that at the moment. Wow. He asked me to get certain information from him, which I did. And he's an exceptionally good fellow, very nice man. And I'll be in touch with him on a regular basis. But he is also a cousin who played with Dundalk, Horgan. It's a fellow called Horgan. He played with Dundalk. He was a good truck up there.
Oh. And come here, Frank, what was the celebrations like?
Oh, the celebrations afterwards were just absolutely huge, you know.
Yeah. Could only imagine, you know.
Oh, you could imagine, right up to... they talk about the dressing room afterwards, you know, when certain individuals wanted to get into the dressing room, it was absolutely chock-a-block, you know, with people rush trying to get in there, congratulate everybody.
Yeah.
I remember Circle Quigley closing the door, and I mentioned that in my report, you know, of the match, of that report that I wrote about
during the week, in the draw,
losing
those lovely pieces.
This fella, I could still see that man that I mentioned. I could still see him, the door being closed on him as it was where, you know, he was one of many, but Jim Quigley done what was right, you know.
And were you paraded up and down the length and breadth of the county?
Oh, well, okay. After that, we went to the Hollybrook Hotel. There was a big reception there for us. And they went on till all hours in the morning, and we got a bit of sleep. And then the following day, we were paraded around Dublin. We were up into O'Connell Street and places like that. And
wow.
Taken up on top of some building up there in the middle of O'Connell Street, photographs taken and one thing and another, and back for more food. And then eventually set off for Drogheda on various cars, you know. And Drogheda, then we were met around south of the Vine there, and there was a huge crowd assembled there, and we were taken into the White Horse Hotel, where the lower doors were closed off and the window taken out, and we were taken in through the first floor.
Oh wow! Right.
All this type of thing was organised because there was the crowds down underneath where it was just jam-packed, with people. And coming to see the homecoming, so to speak,
Yeah.
And then all the way into Dundalk, then even stopping on my own village in Loudon Green, there was bonfires there, and there was dancing, and there was whatnot.
Yeah.
And right in from there, the whole way into Dundalk. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, we were still in Dundalk.
Wow.
And then it was time to get back to RD and places like that. We must have been out the whole night,
Yeah. And does an All-Ireland medal change your life, Frank? They say it
Oh,
does.
no. So, well, it's let's say as far as me and Louth are concerned, it's very special to have it, and you look and say you're one of a number that has it, and only a small number, if you know what I mean. There are no senior All-Ireland medals going now in Louth for the last 62 years or whatever,
Yeah.
And before that, there was All-Ireland medals in. Well, they won 3 All-Ireland medals, 3 All-Irelands in total, 1910 and 1912,
Yeah.
And I was quite pleased because the Geraldines were represented in all 3 teams that played in 1910, 12 and 57.
Okay.
And Joe Johnson and Joe Donnelly, they won their All-Irelands in 1910 and 12, and they were Geraldines, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Lynches that time, there would have been about 7 Lynches played on the Geraldines team,
Okay.
So it was a hectic year, to say the least of it,
And you must have did well in your leaving as well, did you? You did all right.
got my leaving all right. I would have got it anyway with a struggle, and then I had to go and look for a job.
Yeah. And then and why did you never kick on after that, Frank?
Why did Louth never kick on?
Yeah, I know you went to Leinster final in '60 and the following season as well.
Bear in mind then that we played after winning the All-Ireland, we played in 2 National League games. And if you were reading the report now that I had, that was in the Argus, you would see what happened then with Jim Quigley, and where we were greeted by the Yanks prior to the All-Ireland, and we were given money. Jim Quigley was made a present of a certain amount of money, which was about $600 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And he was told that would be for the team, and if they won the All-Ireland, they would be invited to New York for a match sometime in May or thereabouts, And so this was a huge thing at that time, to be invited to play in the Polo Grounds in New York. If we won the game, And that invitation was issued by John Kerry O'Donnell and the Jimmy Carl brothers from North Louth, And they spoke that night at their reception in RD, and it was a great stimulus, if you like to put it that way, for us to try and make that extra, if it was required, an extra effort, bearing in mind that we were going to get a huge trip to New York,
Yeah. So you go to New York, but there's one man missing, didn't make the trip, the manager.
Well, this was an absolute disgrace, to tell you. There's no other word for it. Because what happened, that money was given to the manager of the Louth team.
Yeah.
In the event of us getting a trip to New York, that this was to defray expenses of the team. And that was handed to him when Jim McMullen and Peter Carney were present in Casey's of RD when they made that presentation. We were in for a cup of tea after training. And Jim Quigley accepted it, and we heard no more about it until we won the All-Ireland, and then all sorts of comments were being made afterwards. Where did the money go? But Jim Quigley had it all the time, right?
Yes.
Now, we played in Galway, sometime in November after the All-Ireland, and following the match, Jim Quigley, we were beaten by a point that day against Galway in one hell of a match, and there was only one player who wasn't able to be present on that occasion, and that was Patsy Coleman, because he was concussed in the match and had to go to hospital.
Okay.
And he was the only player who was not present at that meeting afterwards, when we got our meal after the match. And Jim Quigley came in and threw the dollars on the table, and he says, "No, lads," he says, "what am I going to do with that money? That's your money." He says, "You have to decide what you're going to do with it."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And of course, naturally, the player said, "You hold on to it. It was given to you in the form of expenses, to defray expenses, whatever expense. No, we give it to the county board, we'll hear no more about it." Well, now, that information and that meeting that we had in the hotel in the Shamrock Lodge in Athlone was never relayed to the county board.
Okay, right.
Now, I'm not saying they would have sided with us or anything like that, but they should have been told. They were not told. And whose duty was that to tell them? It wasn't mine. I was the youngest player on the team,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, you're the baby of the team.
Now, you can deduce from that who should have told them.
Yeah.
But they were told nothing about it. Now, what happened was the convention was held, and and everything was passed over. Then the first meeting of the county board took place as was normal, and then the selectors were to be appointed for the incoming 1958
season, yeah.
Year, you know. And the selectors, what happened then? Nobody for one moment thought there was going to be an election for a selection committee.
Yeah.
Because, as a rule, after winning the All-Ireland, what more could the original selection committee do?
Yeah, I know.
They had won the All-Ireland.
Yeah.
Now, if you were acting as chairman, wouldn't it be sensible to
go with the flow, yeah, just
committee, those present, to unanimously accept the outgoing committee to be re-elected for the following year?
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
There was now all sorts of rumours mingling around what happened to the money and all this type of thing. And poor Jim Quigley came under some sort of scrutiny. But nobody relayed the facts of what happened in the hotel in Galway.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Right.
And there should have been. That's what should have been. At least the officialdom should have been told. But even if they were not told, the last thing they should have done was interfere with the selection committee that was there. Because Jim Quigley was the leader of that selection committee.
Yeah.
He was the worker of that selection committee. At all times, he was the man that spoke. He was the lecturer in chief, let's put it that way.
Okay.
And why then should it have been necessary for a chairman to come along and look for further proposals at the meeting for the selection of a new selection committee? Because he knew what it was about.
Yeah. And so so you go to America and Jim's not there, which is absolutely
it's
unheard of, you know.
Yeah, but that was unbelievable. But the fault lay somewhere. Now, okay, if I had been acting as chairman in that capacity, let me add, I would not have tolerated, no matter what was before me, I would not have tolerated a proposal to elect a new selection committee.
Yeah.
Now, Jack Regan was persuaded, in my opinion, by certain elements within the county to stand for election in opposition to Jim Quigley. But in my opinion, Jim Quigley should have been the first elected. He headed the poll the year before.
Yeah.
Why was he now looking for the last seat in for going forward in 1958? And he was pitted against Jack Regan. Now, Jack Regan was an extremely popular man. And I have no doubt, too, that came from an inter-club, this non-affiliated club that existed in the Dundalk GNL Works.
Yes.
And there was a number of clubs included there where there were all GA people, as it were, attached to other clubs.
Yes.
And they got Jack Regan to stand. And Owen Rogers proposed that he each individual selector be elected individually. And he got his way. And he worked in the GNR railway. He worked in the garage. And Jack Regan worked there. So, in my opinion, it has to have, the influence had to come from there. Because the officialdom now knew that they were going to get support in what they were thinking. That Jim Quigley deserved to be put out because of the fact that he held on to those dollars. But nobody told them that those dollars were held onto because the players backed them to the hilt.
Yeah, they would have, And would you say if Jim Quigley stays on, there's more in you, there's another All-Ireland in you?
There is no question about it.
Right.
If Jim Quigley had to stay on, it's another hour's conversation.
Yes.
If Jim Quigley had to stay on, Louth would have won at least 2 more All-Irelands in the years that followed. Why? You take Tom Conlon, for example. He retired, didn't he? After coming back from New York. He after the trip to New York, never again, right?
Yeah.
He did his best to get Jim Quigley to New York. To New York. He didn't even get the trip to New York.
Yeah.
It was damnable what happened.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have happened in any other country but Louth.
I know. Well, Frank, your memory's incredible.
Well, it may be, but I knew the facts and details that followed the meetings that took place in the Lawn Hotel in order to deal with the $600 and how it was shared among the players. Okay. Remember this, we the players, well, you take myself, I was on the princely sum of 5 shillings a week at the time.
Right.
I was an apprentice accountant that had to pay £40 for premium to start your few accountancy jobs.
Yeah,
they were non-existent those years.
Yeah.
Not like now. Nobody had mobile phones and telephones and that type of thing, cars or anything like that. You had to do things if you wanted to travel somewhere. You had to go on a bicycle, or you had something like that. That's the way you went about it. But the fact of the matter was that the period that followed, leading up to the trip to America, which was a tremendous trip, unbelievable.
You're seeing shaking hands with Robert
Kennedy. 3 weeks holidays, and you put the people in New York. The Louth people in New York couldn't do enough for you. They were brilliant.
Yeah.
And we come home with great reports about the entire trip. There's no question about that. Everybody enjoyed themselves.
You met Robert Kennedy as well.
But there was one man who did not, and that was the man that did all the work for us. And I'm ashamed to say it.
Okay, yeah.
Make no mistake about it. Jim Quigley should not have been treated like that.
Yes.
Jim Quigley was a man of great integrity and all the rest of it. There was no question about that. And that money was all distributed among the players, went to all the players and brought one selector and one other player. Because we had 22 players in the whole lot, and the New York board paid for 20.
Well, thanks very much for clearing that up, Frank. You've really aired it out there, and you've took us on a great journey across Louth, celebrating an All Ireland.
It was a hard effort. It was something special, though, the whole thing. Yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, look, what happens with the county board? Our board, I have no hesitation in saying, we're weak.
Right.
Weak in many respects. I have also said to them, when they went to Croke Park, they didn't fight hard enough. For example, we played our Leinster final in Navan that year, in 1958, the year that followed. Why didn't they play it in Croke Park? Why go over to Navan? We were never very successful there. But we were always fairly successful, reasonably successful above in Croke Park. But none of them ever thought about any of this type of thing, But that's the following year where Quigley wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think of the mistakes that were made by selectors in the years that followed. That's where Quigley was missed. Make no mistake about it. He had a great head. He was a brilliant man. And he was a good man. Right. Make no mistake about that. And he was treated shabbily by the Louth County Board. And may I say this much too, that a lot of our players could have come to the fore a lot more
Okay.
than they did in trying to persuade the county board to change matters, but they didn't do it.
Yeah. I suppose.
And as a result, they lost 2 All-Irelands, in my opinion. We lost an All-Ireland certainly in 1959. Conlon wouldn't have retired in 58 if Quigley had been there. He would have went on for another year. And he was a giant of a man. There was no question about that. And then you had the 59, for example, where we had 2 games against Dublin, and we lost the replay in dastardly fashion, to say the least of it.
Right.
And then we had the 1960, where I myself was left on the field because he had teared out with a dead leg, having got a serious injury just before half-time. We led awfully 5-3 at half-time.
Yeah.
We would have taken that All-Ireland that year, because awfully it took 2 games for Down to beat Offaly that year by a pint.
Yeah.
By a pint, and we would have won that game. We had plenty of good players in the line, but the selection committee was all wrong.
Yeah.
And they had this feeling of favouring their own men from their own clubs and all this type of thing.
An age-old problem, and you could have it, you could say it. But Louth top of the pile then, Frank, I suppose that's one positive way of leaving it. Going out on that positive note, that Louth at the top of the ladder, I suppose, in All Ireland football. Like, you know, if there was All Stars back then, they're being handed out, and we're top. Yeah.
I have no hesitation in saying that if Quigley had been in that, leading that selection committee, and I'm not faulting Jack Regan. Jack Regan was a great player, but the fact of the matter was he was persuaded and influenced to oppose Jim Quigley.
And he had that track record, I suppose, Quigley as well, like of doing it.
He had, of course, he had proved himself.
Yes.
And he had his commitment. He went and he sought out Seamie O'Donnell, who was a great player.
Yeah.
And Seamie was a guard below O'Mead in that year. Yeah. And he got Seamie O'Donnell to play. He went down to him. And Seamie now is in Wexford, still alive, thank God, but has had multiple sclerosis for 30, 40 years, you know. And Seamie played a major part in that victory in 57.
Frank, I'll have to get you on again.
I'm afraid you will, because I went on too much. Make sure you edit a lot of that.
I'll cut a bit of it out, but thanks very much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And it's just
we must be on an hour, are we?
We're on over an hour. It's an hour and 7 minutes.
Yeah. Well,
we could go for another 2, I'd say.
I don't know, but I'm just making the point that I remember the very first game that we played in the athletic grounds in 1958. And to see Jim Quigley coming over to me as a young lad, you know, going out to play in that game against Meath for the Self Football Boots or something like that, sponsored by E.J. Conley. And they come over to me to tell me, give me a bit of advice. And to tell you the truth, I really cried.
Okay.
I couldn't believe that the man who had done so much work had been insulted in the way he was.
Yeah.
And how diligent he still was working for the GA.
Yeah,
he worked he worked continually even afterwards for the GA.
For the good of our GA.
You know, undoubtedly he was hurt, you know.
Yeah.
But Frank, it should never have happened. And then, needless to say, when we went across to New York, the first person, the one didn't know where Quigley was. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Frank,
I had a great time in New York.
We'll have to get you on and talk about New York again.
Including running the subway track.
Frank, thanks for Instagram. Subscribe to me wherever you get your podcast. And thanks again for coming back for another week of podcast. And here's to 100 more Loud and Proud podcasts.